returning, I want to welcome you back. Be sure to like and share and subscribe so the next time that I post new videos, you will be one of the first ones to be alerted. I'm TriCasting on YouTube Live and LinkedIn and Facebook Live. So welcome again. What are we going to talk about today? Well, we're going to hit on something that's been in the news a lot, and that's the fact that everybody is talking about President Donald Trump and the coronavirus and what he knew and when did he know it. There were some recorded interviews featuring the president, and in those recorded interviews, the president talked a lot about other things, but primarily the coronavirus. These taped interviews happened as far ago as February 2020. So in those interviews, President Trump revealed that he really knew that COVID-19, the coronavirus, was more deadly than the seasonal flu. That's what he said in private in the interviews. But in public, during his public statements, he said that the coronavirus was not nearly as serious as anything that we, the American public, should be worried about any more than we worry about the seasonal flu. So in private, he said that it was more deadly. In public, he said it wasn't that deadly. In private, during these recorded audio interviews, it was said that President Trump said he realized that children were more susceptible or just as susceptible to getting the coronavirus, and it was more as dangerous to them as it was to the elderly population. That's what he said in private. In public, he said children were not that susceptible. They could fight it off. They should go ahead and go back to school because remember, he wanted children to go back to school and threatened to remove public funding, federal funding from schools if they didn't return. And so even without a clear plan on how to keep anybody safe, the children or the teachers or administrators, he just said, go back to school. Even though in private, he said he knew children were more susceptible or just as susceptible than the elderly. In public, President Trump, in these recorded interviews, said, open up the businesses, go back. And he wanted us, remember, to go back to things as they were before the coronavirus hit as early as April. He wanted us to be back on track by Easter. Remember that? But in private, during these taped interviews, he said he knew that the coronavirus was spread through the air, by people who were asymptomatic, people who didn't show any signs or symptoms, and they could be carriers and be infecting others. That's what he said in private. But in public, he urged everyone to go back to work, back to business as usual. Now, I'm not sure, it wasn't a surprise to me that these taped interviews didn't tell me anything about Donald Trump that I didn't already know. We already knew he was a liar. Okay. So for you to tell me that a liar is a lion again, that's nothing new. That's like telling me dogs bark, babies cry, cats meow. I know that already. But here's what I want to know. Here's the question that I have. We already knew that Donald Trump is a liar and he is willing to cheat his way to get what he wants. And he is willing to put your life on the line, my life on the line, people's lives, American lives on the line to get reelected. And that's what was proven. But if you want to know what I have questions about, it's these good white people. Like For example, the person who did the interview with Donald Trump. You might you might ask, who is this journalist, and why did it take this journalist so long to come forth with the information? Well, apparently, this information was these interviews were for a book, and the journalist, his name is Bob Woodward. Now, if you don't know about the Watergate scandal, you might be too young to remember. Bob Woodward is a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist. He's most notable for the Watergate scandal, and essentially Watergate scandal was about another lying president. This lying president's name was Richard Nixon. So just going to give you the short version. Apparently it came to public knowledge that President Richard Nixon in the 70s, when he was running for re-election, he acknowledged, he knew about, and he approved the break-in of the Democratic National Headquarters office in Washington, D.C. at the Watergate Hotel. That's why it was called the Watergate scandal. So apparently it came to pass that President Nixon knew about it. There were audio tapes of him acknowledging his understanding and knowledge of the Watergate break-in. And so Bob Woodward was one of the noted journalists with the Washington Post that covered all of this scandal. And it led to some impeachment hearings. And before President Nixon was impeached, he resigned from office. So Bob Woodward is known for being one of those journalists involved with that. So Bob Woodward knows the importance of holding elected officials accountable for their actions to the American public. So why, you ask, would someone of Bob Woodward's journalistic caliber hold information from January to September, 7 months, without letting us know? And in the meantime, tens of thousands of people lost their lives. Why would he do that? Well, it turns out that he did that because he was trying to sell a book. Because in a couple of days, his book is supposed to be published, and this information was for his book. So, you mean to tell me that he's putting forth information 7 months later that could have saved tens of thousands of people's lives, but he held on to it because he's trying to sell a book? That tells me, Bob Woodward, that you are no better than Donald Trump. You are just as self-serving as Donald Trump. Because if you were so upstanding, if you were such one of the good white people that you claim to be, you would have brought this information to the public's attention 7 months ago, okay? But you didn't. So you're just as greedy and you're just as self-serving as Donald Trump. Now let's talk about somebody else who was selling books and holding information. If you're familiar with John Bolton, John Bolton is the former national security advisor to Donald Trump. So I think he was the national security advisor for a couple of years, more than a year, less than two, something like that. And then out of the blue, all of a sudden, John Bolton left the administration, giving us some, standard operating. This is why I'm leaving, to be with my family, or some type of excuse that they always give. It's like it was a merry-go-round of people coming and going in the Trump administration. So John Bolton left. And then let's fast forward to there are a lot of people, they had the impeachment hearings because Donald Trump, again, known to be lying and cheating and trying to cheat his way to victory in a second election. And it came out. So they had congressional hearings. One of the people they wanted to testify was the former National Security Advisor, John Bolton, who refused to testify. Now, why would he refuse to testify? Was it because he felt like he didn't have any information to share that would bring to light more a clearer picture of the kind of person who is leading the United States? No, that wasn't it. It was because he was holding the information for his book that later came out. And in that book, John Bolton revealed that he knew that President Trump had asked either the president of China or leadership in China to help him in his reelection campaign. So for months, John Bolton held on to that information, something that could have made the difference in whether or not President Trump, got impeached. He held that information so that he could have it published in his book. So you, John Bolton, are just as greedy. You are just as self-serving as the Donald Trump that you wrote about in your book. So that's the second person. Now, most recently, like 2 weeks ago, because there's always something, always some revelation coming about Donald Trump and his behavior. You might remember the Atlantic magazine article that noted at least 4 people who worked in the Trump administration who said that they remember that President Donald Trump said in their presence, he called members of the military and people who had died in military combat, he called them losers, and he called them suckers and losers. Losers because they either got caught as POWs or they died in combat, or suckers because they actually gave their service to America to help protect America. And because Donald Trump can't see why that would benefit anybody, he called them suckers and losers. So 4 people anonymously gave information to the Atlantic magazine. Now, here's my take on anonymous sources, because if I hadn't told you, and I probably hadn't, because I don't talk about it a lot, but I used to be a TV reporter and a newspaper reporter. I worked in Washington, D.C., in North Carolina. I've worked in different parts of the country as a daily news reporter. I've covered congressional hearings in Washington, D.C. I've covered the State of the Union address, at least 2 of them. And so I have I know that as a journalist, you have to have sources, and you would prefer for them to be on the record. But if people have enough substantiating evidence, if you can corroborate it by somebody else telling you the same thing, and that person doesn't want to come forward, then you might go ahead and use that information. But to have 4 people to anonymously tell you something, I don't know if I would have used that information, because here's what I say. If what you have to go run tell that is that important, then you should be man enough or woman enough to come forward and say it out in public. Okay? So what are you afraid of? If he said it, then be man enough or woman enough to say, he told me this, especially if it's 4 y'all. You mean there's 4 people out there who have the same story, and none of y'all have the guts to stand up and say this man said it? Now, that's not to say they're lying, but I'm saying that's how I feel about anonymous sources. But let's get back, because I digressed. 4 people said that during a travel event to France, where apparently the president was supposed to go and visit military cemeteries and give honor to military people who had died in the line of duty. Apparently the president did not want to go, had cared more about his hair blowing in the wind than he did about celebrating these people. And that's in the context of that situation. That's when he said military people are liars and suckers. I'm sorry, losers and suckers. Okay, so they came forth, and now everybody is up in arms because the president has called military people losers and suckers. Now, Meghan McCain, Meghan McCain, we haven't forgotten about you. I'm including you in this too, because the president is a self-proclaimed sexual assaulter. He says he grabs women by the vagina to get what he wants. He has disparaged and stereotyped Mexicans, called them criminals and liars, and that they don't deserve to come to America for whatever America has to offer them. Okay, he is a cheater. He cheats people out of their money. He is being sued or was being sued by contractors who have worked at his businesses, and he apparently had them do the work and did not pay them, and they sued him for that. So this is somebody who, before he was elected, has proven himself to be racist and a cheater and a liar and a professed sexual assaulter. But that was okay. Y'all voted for him anyway, good white people. But now, when he calls your daddy, Meghan McCain, when he calls your daddy, John McCain, a loser, and apparently you found out he didn't want to lower the flags, the American flag, to half staff when your father passed. Now, all of a sudden, Donald Trump is such a bad person. When he talks about black and brown people, I'm trying to make sure I'm still on air because I'm getting some feedback going on. When he talks about black and brown people in such stereotypical, disparaging ways, that was okay. Y'all voted for him anyway. But when he calls your veterans, your military leaders, and people who died in the line of duty, when he calls them losers and suckers and talks about your daddy, Meghan McCain, now all of a sudden the man is not fit to serve. We knew that he wasn't fit to lead a parade before he got elected. Now, all of a sudden, you want us to believe, oh, he's not even fit to lead the nation. Well, we already knew that. So, good white people, y'all voted for him. Now it's your mess. You clean it up. Why is it that your pain and your anguish and your disdain for somebody is so much more important when clearly you knew what type of person he was before he was elected, but you turned a blind eye. You looked the other way. Now all of a sudden, when it's coming out that he is this terrible person that he told you he was from the beginning, now all of a sudden you have a problem voting for him. And now you want black and brown people to join you, kumbaya, hold your hand, go to the voting polls and vote him out of office when he told you who he was from the beginning. So, good white people, you can't just be good when you want to be good. You can't just have it your way when you want it that way, but then be self-serving the whole time. So Bob Woodward is a great journalist, but he's just as self-serving and just as greedy as Donald Trump because he withheld information that could have saved tens of thousands of lives, but he didn't because it didn't serve him. John Bolton, everybody sang his praises, said he was this great person. And I'm not denying that he's not, because people, stand up they meet the challenge sometimes and sometimes they don't. This time, John Bolton, you proved yourself to be just as self-serving and just as greedy as Donald Trump is all the time. Okay? Meghan McCain, just because he talked about your daddy, he talked about everybody else's father, son, brother, mother, sister before he talked about your daddy. Okay? So he was already a bad influence. He was already that type of person before, but you didn't stand up for other people. You didn't stand up for their fathers, but now you want us to stand up for your father and vote against him. You anonymous sources for the Atlantic magazine, be man enough, be woman enough to come out and say, you know what? Instead of you hiding behind the check or the White House connections or the next job that you're trying to get, if it really means that much to you that you want to save America from Donald Trump and tell veterans how bad of a person he is and what he thinks of them, then you should be willing to say that out loud in public and not behind the anonymity of being an anonymous source. So that's the way I feel about it. You want to know why some Black people, some brown people are not going to vote? That's because you take us for granted. You take our vote for granted. You take our pain for granted. You take our intelligence for granted. You take our asset, the fact that we are an asset, for granted. You rather look at us as a liability instead of the asset that we have proven ourselves to be for the last 435 years. And you know what? We're tired of it. And so if that means that we sit out the election, and so what if he's reelected? That's on y'all, good white people. Y'all voted him in. Y'all handle that mess. Okay? Some of us are going to vote, but some of us are not. So when you do the calculations at the end of the day and you figure out why he got elected or why got reelected or why the election was as close as it was, or maybe why the Democrats won, well, it's because some people are just tired of being taken for granted. And the next time somebody tells you who they are, you need to believe them. Just because they're not talking about your daddy today, just because they're not talking to foreign leaders that you consider to be detrimental today, doesn't mean they're not going to do it tomorrow against you. So that's really all I have to say. And if you want to like and share this video to any of the good white people that you know out there that need to see it, then you go ahead and you like and share, and definitely subscribe so that the next time I post new videos, you will be one of the first ones to know. And to find out more about the things that I care about, you can go to the written version of my journal. That's at eurweb.com. Thanks and have a super day.